So let's close this session by making some final remarks about functions. As I said in the beginning, there are many reasons for why using functions is actually a very good idea in practice. Some of the most important reasons include is that first, your code becomes more concise and transparent. This makes it easier for others to use it, but also easier for you to understand what you've written in the past. Why? Because when you use functions, by the use of arguments, by the use of proper names for the function, it becomes more clear what the code actually does, as compared to a case where people really need to figure out how your variables actually interact with each other. Secondly, functions help you to structure your code. Using a function, you can clearly distinguish between the step of thinking about a problem and how to solve it on the one hand, and then applying your solution strategy to actual problems on the other hand. Well, this might sound self-evident at first, especially if you apply the stuff you're doing to many cases. This becomes very important. It is much easier to see at the beginning of your script, or even in a separate script, your function and thereby your strategy of how you want to tackle a particular problem, and then in the main script just see this procedure being applied to many cases, as compared to a situation where you have just like one big text or one big script where there are a lot of problems and your solutions to these problems immediately after the problem. Distinguishing between a strategy to tackle a problem and the application of this strategy really makes for better structure. It makes your code more readable, and it actually helps you in the course of thinking about the solution in the first place. And thirdly, functions actually facilitate debugging and help avoiding incidental mistakes. Why do they facilitate debugging? So think about, you've written a function and you apply it to three cases. Once you figure out that you've made a mistake in the function definition, you actually only need to correct the mistake in the function definition, and then you can apply the corrected function to all the three cases. So you only need to make one correction. However, if you thought about the problem in a mistaken way, and you've written this 3 times, each time to address one of the problem instances, you need to make 3 corrections, and it's easy to forget one. And it helps by avoiding incidental mistakes, because when you have a function and you write it, and then you might even document it, then it is usually you're less error prone, because you're more explicit. You're investing more time in actually writing down how you address the problem, such that incidental mistakes, which happen frequently if you just write a solution mechanism to each instance on its own, there they apply more frequently. So let's look at these 3 arguments in the context of the function we've just written to solve the exercise. So let's look at the case we just covered. We were asked to compute daily interest rates based on the annual interest rate, capital invested duration of the investment. Here, just 3 example cases to which we could apply our function. But first, look at the case where we do all this without the function. We have here the case 1, case 2, case 3. And assume we have written the equation here, we execute it, and then we are wondering about why these numbers here are so weird. And we figure out, okay, here we actually made a mistake. Here we have a division instead of a multiplication. So if we are dealing with this case without a function, we need to correct our mistake in 3 instances before we get the correct values. If we had written our function here, there would be the same problem, but we now need to correct our error only once here in the function definition. Once we correct it and we redefine our function, all the cases in which the function is applied are now correct. And this might be might look very evident here in the case where we have 3 applications in a row. Especially when you're dealing with more complex problems, you might use your functions in many different areas of your maybe multiple scripts. And then it's really a game changer if you have all your functions in one place and you can correct for a mistake in a routine only at this one place and be assured that the routine has been corrected for in every case. Then secondly, the argument here, if we have the case with the function, it is very clear. Here in the beginning, we have the routine we apply described. This is how we solve the problem of computing daily interests. And here in the second part of the script, we have the applications of the function. Here in the case where we don't have a function, basically the idea of how to solve the problem and the application of this is combined, muddled. Again, in this super simple case, not too much of a big deal, but it is actually, especially if you come back to this problem later on and you don't exactly remember how to actually compute daily payments, it's much easier to follow everything by seeing, okay, here's the function definition, here's the place where you describe how the problem is solved, and then here just see all the applications separated. And then if you want to improve that even further, you can do what I would recommend you, especially for more complex cases. You could document your function. You do this, there are some guidelines for how to document functions. There are these little bit more fancy comments followed by single quotation sign. You see a lot of documentation about how to document a function in the internet or in the course material, so have a look at that. Here we just add the most basic things. It's very useful for you later using this function if the function has a name that's written in English and that corresponds somehow to the name of the function in R. So we could say, okay, here compute the daily interest of an investment. Then it's a good idea to explain what the arguments of the functions are. There is the convention to use add param, and then to add the name of each argument to the function. And then to quickly describe what this parameter is about. Right? In this case here, it's the annual interest rate in percent. Here we have the total So if you come back later and you see this code and you don't understand what this function actually does, you can go to the function definition, and here you immediately see, okay, there are 3 arguments. First argument does this, the second does this, etc., etc. Then it's also a very good idea to describe what the function actually returns. And now it is very straightforward, even if you later don't remember what the function does, to get back to the function definition and to actually get a very solid documentation. This is even better if you have more complex problems to be solved. Here, of course, it's very simple, but this is really a game changer. From my experience, I can say, you work on problems, you work 2 weeks on a different thing, you will forget what you did in detail. So you will love your past self for a good function definition and good function documentation. And this also makes it much easier for colleagues and friends to reuse your own functions. Let's get back here to the final remarks. I hope this somehow illustrates some of these reasons of how to use functions. Then one remark, of course, it's always a good idea to write your own function, but especially for very common problems, check whether somebody else has written this function before you, and it might be easier to actually just use a package written by somebody else and use the function instead of writing your own. Then again, when you think about more complex problems and you want to tackle these problems within the function, my personal recommendation would be to really sit down and sketch your ideas with pen and paper, make a lot of notes, and then implement them within the function. And then finally, as I just indicated, always document your functions for others to use them more easily, but also for your future self to use it and to not be too frustrated with your own. There are some suggested readings in the manuals where it is very nicely explained how to document your functions properly, but even the very simple example I gave you in the beginning is already extremely helpful.